Why is rejection a good thing? Or is it?
Yeah. I used to, for the longest time, think that rejection was a bad thing. Like the end of the world sort of thing. Like you get rejected, you don't get this or that opportunity, like it's over, right? But I think in a lot of cases, rejection and failure is where you learn the absolute most. And it's really the only way to grow, because if you're doing everything right, you're just going to continue moving forward thinking that you're doing everything right when in fact you could be doing a lot of things wrong. So for rejection specifically, if you reach that barrier and you want this opportunity and you're not able to get it, it makes you go, okay, well, why would that be? If I couldn't get it and I wanted it and I tried for it and I didn't get it, then it requires you to do some like soul searching and go, okay, like, are there skills that I'm missing? Is there any way to sort of like up my game? And then you figure that out. So, that could be, okay, if I don't have this experience, how do I go get that experience? Do I need to do a short film or something that can get me in that arena, in that specific genre if you're not working in that genre? So that's, I think rejection is kind of key.
Yeah, and then life teaches us too that sometimes things are political in nature, and I don't mean DC politics. I mean, friendships or whatever, and so that's a bitter pill to swallow as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we can always face that in life, and we can be mad about it. And sometimes there's just nothing that we can do.
Yeah, and sometimes the thing is, like, sometimes it doesn't pay off ever, and a loss is just a loss. Sometimes it does pay off and you learn something and you grow and you go on to something better, or it leads you to a different opportunity that could be better. Because I'm a big believer in that, life is a path. And things aren't necessarily random, and things could be built for a purpose, a path for a purpose. So I think rejection is a really good way, a sort of bumper, if you will, to maybe lead you on the path that maybe you should be. So it can be a blessing in disguise, or it can just be nothing. And you just have to deal with that loss and that hurt. But even then, that can teach you something along the way as well.
Right. Well, we've all known people that feel rejected and are like, I'm leaving this town. No one wants me here. And, forget this. I'm going to clean up my language here, but I'm leaving. And it seems like you take things in stride, or maybe I'm just assuming.
I mean, outwardly, yeah.
Okay.
I take things in stride.
That's better,
yeah. But
that's all that matters.
Alone at home, like, yeah, it's
sure.
it hits, and I think it affects everybody. But it's really about what you do next. And I don't think giving up is ever an option. I think pivoting, learning, self-reflecting, those are all things that are sort of necessary. But it is action. Like, if you get rejected and you just do nothing, then it's like you can sort of lose and you can just sort of be done. But if you take action, and really sort of try to key in on that rejection, maybe it gives you motivation, the feeling of loss or rejection. Maybe you have that sort of like, oh, I'll show them, like anything that gets you to action, I think is important.
How can one project flow into another?
In a lot of ways, that can be unknowable, which is kind of cool. But, if you're working on a feature and then you get an idea for another feature or a short, like, I think you should just kind of do that, because you don't know where the paths are. You want to chase the green lights, and sort of try to avoid the red lights, or hit the red lights and then go around. That's a whole Matthew McConaughey thing, that book, Green Lights. It's fantastic. Highly recommend it. But yeah, it's just, I think for me at least, it comes down to the core of like, what do I want to do and what excites me, right? Because that's my divining rod. of like, okay, if I follow what I want to do, what I'm passionate about, what I'm interested in, then I don't think it's ever going to like turn out wrong, you know, because I'm going to enjoy what I'm doing along the way, you know, and then you get the happy surprises where like, oh, you know, like a great actor wants to be in your, you know, little tiny project that you're going to shoot at your house, you know, it's like, oh, that's cool, great. And I did that because I had this idea that I wanted to do, and, you know, like, and I learned something from this other project that I'm going to take into the smaller thing, and then you go from there, you know, and then, you know, maybe you take that short on the film festival route and you meet some people, and then, you know, you have like people who are your fans there, you know, and people who are your friends, and you can sort of work on things together and move forward together, you know, so it can vacillate from you doing something just on your own and like having to wear that backpack and carry that, you know, push that boulder up the hill, you know, and sometimes you get a group of people, you know, who you all do it together. It just kind of depends, but it's following that path. And I mean, I think certainly having that, not an end goal, but a certain goal that you see in the future, you know, so you're not like acting reactively, I think is something to keep you on the path, but try to build that career that you want. And it may take you different directions, but at least you have that sort of end goal in mind.
And just to go back to your writing again, you say you like stories that are about sort of power imbalance, rich versus poor, but it also seems like you like supernatural sort of mediumship. You're you know, attracted to maybe being able to communicate with the deceased in some ways. Where does that come from?
Oh man, I am fascinated with what is on the other side, and that started in college, where I took a class called Death and Dying, and really like heavy emotional thing, you know, to take a whole semester about death and dying. But I was so fascinated, and it really sparked my interest in like what is on the other side, you know. So hearing about hospice, you know, workers, and when people are at the end of their life and they see family members, like that is interesting to me, you know, because it's like, why is it always someone who's passed on that is coming as sort of the guide into, you know, the other side? Like, that's always fascinating. Why isn't anybody else? Why isn't it somebody who's like living now? You know, is that something the mind creates? Is that actually real? So there's just like this, I think I have this fascination of wondering what's on the other side. And so in my projects, I like to try to figure that out, you know, just go through my ideas, you know, not to spoil anything about Curse of the Sin Eater, but, you know, that's certainly something that we try to explore, you know, because it is about death and dying and sins and all of that. So yeah, it's something that's always interested me, and I'm finding that I'm trying to attack whatever my central thesis is, or to figure out my understanding of what's on the other side, because it's inevitable for everybody. So maybe I'm afraid, and I'm trying to prepare myself for what's out there, but I don't know, it's just fascinating.
Sure. And have you ever been to, let's say, New Orleans, or, you know, did you play in graveyards as a kid? I don't know.
No. I have been to New Orleans when I was younger, and that was a really fascinating experience, which I remember. You know, and I've had, this may sound crazy, but I've had brushes with, you know, ghostly things. You know, in London, there was a whole story that I could share that was kind of crazy, you know, and like seeing dark shapes in the corner of my apartment at some point, you know, and my wife is very much a skeptic. She does not want to see that stuff. But, you know, when we went to Salem, Massachusetts, one time she saw something, and, you know, it's like, to have my skeptic wife see something, I was like, okay, like there's something to this. So there's just been enough like little evidence of seeing supernatural stuff in my life where I'm like, okay, like I don't know what it is, but I kind of want to know more and investigate it.